Voice of college football here to clean up the mess that we just witnessed in Boulder, Colorado. Unfortunately for Matt Rule and offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield, they can't leave the mess. They got to take it with them back to Lincoln. Best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football. Colorado 36, Nebraska 14. Let's take a look. Let's focus on the Buffs first. Even though there's so much more to say about Nebraska. The Buffs, I stated it right here after the TCU win as a 3-touchdown underdog. More impressed, even more so than all the speed and space, the receivers, Travis Hunter just being maybe the most athletic football player in all of college football, and Shedeur Sanders being better than advertised. All of that aside, I was impressed with Deion Sanders putting together a football program, putting together a roster, the personnel, the packages, everything, and his coaching staff, led by Sean Lewis, especially on the offensive side coming in from Kent State, and being able to do that quickly with 68 transfer players, 88 new players total, including the 2023 high school recruiting class. Throwing them together, practicing in August, going on the road against what's going to turn out to be still a decent TCU team and winning that game on the road. Okay, was there going to be a letdown? Well, I said it all week. We could forecast a letdown, except we know what the crowd was going to be like at Folsom Field in Boulder. We knew that they would lift up the Buffs coming off that big win and a natural letdown spot, but taking on Nebraska, the brand of Nebraska, being told the football players that aren't necessarily aware of the Colorado-Nebraska rivalry, it being tossed in their face by everyone around CU throughout the week to say, hey, this is a rival. This is really our rival, even though they don't play in our conference, even though we don't typically see them, have not for 4 or 5 years. This is our rival. And we saw the hashtags on Twitter, Nebraska Hate Week. So the Buff players, regardless of their sensibilities about this rivalry and the newness to them as rivals, they got inundated. They got indoctrinated this week, and we knew that they would be up. If we saw the spring game, as we all did at Colorado, if they were going to be up for the spring game after going to TCU and winning 45-42 in that fashion, putting up those kind of offensive numbers, yes, the crowd was going to be behind this team, and they certainly were. So the Huskers go into a hornet's nest, and they did not bring their best, especially at the quarterback position. So, again, we'll get back to Nebraska. Let's stay on the Colorado beat because it was a difficult sledding for the Buffs offense against this revamped Nebraska offense. So the negativity surrounding Nebraska football is justified on one side of the football, but let's not underestimate or look past what Nebraska has been able to do on the defensive side. They are so much better through 2 games than what they've been through 5 years under Scott Frost. This is a good defensive football team. And therefore, the Buffs were slowed down. They could run the ball at times, but were generally stuffed by Nebraska, and Shedeur Sanders did not have the luxury of what he was able to produce against TCU. But when it was all said and done, the Nebraska defense broke. Of course it was going to break. It was so pathetic out there what Nebraska did on the offensive side that Colorado hung in there. They were the tight team. They were the tight team. When I say tight, I mean buttoned up tight. They executed just as they did last week, and that was the most impressive thing for me is the execution of the team. Not that Travis Hunter's a freak and Shedeur Sanders is emerging as one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He truly is. He's 68 of 86 in his first 2 games. So he's completing 78, 80% of his passes, something in that range. Xavier Weaver, one of the incoming transfers, 10 catches for $170. And even though Colorado was stymied, Nebraska really brought a great game plan on D, hustled to the ball, controlled the line of scrimmage, did all the things that are required from a defense in this day and age against a high-powered offense with a ton of weapons. Nebraska finally broke, and Colorado did rack up, finally, 468 yards of total offense. But, yeah, 36 points. This was not a 36-point type effort from the Colorado offense because the Nebraska defense was that good. Well, the Huskers gave the game away, and the Buffaloes were certainly right there to take it from them gladly. Let's run down what Nebraska produced in the first half. A series of comical errors. This is ridiculous when you think about it. We see quarterbacks, and I broke in live on the Nebraska channel at halftime to outline what I would do if I was Nebraska going into the second half. So we'll get to that in just a second. But what we saw in the first half was comical. Just errors all over the place, mostly from Jeff Sims. We see quarterbacks in college football one-hand tough snaps all the time. Over their head, off to the side, field ground balls like a shortstop on those snaps back to them. These guys handle the ball a zillion times a week. They're talented, gifted athletes. So they handle the tough snaps like it's nothing. We see it all the time in college football. Jeff Sims could not handle a good snap. The two that he fumbled were right there. So not handling the snap, calling for a snap while the player in motion was still behind center and got clipped with the football, and that became an almost turnover. Should have been a turnover, but fortunately the player in motion covered the ball. So another mistake by Jeff Sims on that one. One of those series drives that actually Nebraska moved the ball a little bit, led to a missed field goal when it clanked off the right upright. And at that point, I tweeted out, "Where is Scott Frost? Where is he? He's got to be on the sideline lurking there somewhere." This has to be rubbing off of the Scott Frost regime from somewhere. He's got to be at least in the stadium. Is he in the state? Is he still in the state of Nebraska? Whatever it is, the Huskers need to do everything possible to pay him off to get him. I'm just kidding. But it just seems like the same football team from that standpoint. Jeff Sims was awful. The horrible, horrendous selection near the end of the first half to throw that ball to the right sideline. Okay, so Jeff Sims stared down the receiver when he was rolling right. He threw it late. Those were the two worst issues there. But he also threw it behind the receiver and not out toward the sideline. He did everything wrong in that play. Colorado picked it off to start to break open a close game. The Nebraska defense did everything possible to keep this team in the game. And Jeff Sims just continued to give it away with stupid decisions and just poor quarterback play. He talked about at Big Ten Media Days and throughout the summer that he was working on forging a reputation. He wants to be known as a passing quarterback. Well, he's not a passing quarterback. And then the decision-making came into play even on a play near the end of the first half in which Nebraska was forced with a 3rd and 17. Jeff Sims couldn't get close to the first down. Well, he ran out of bounds. He needed to keep the clock running. He saved Colorado a timeout and a ton of time. And, of course, they took it down the field and kicked a field goal to make it 13-0 at halftime. So Jeff Sims made physical errors. He made mental errors. He was just a mess in the first half and a mess for the entire game against Minnesota. How good would this offense look with Casey Thompson at quarterback? At the time that Jeff Sims was signed and transferred from Georgia Tech and Casey Thompson was still at Nebraska, I would have never thought to compare the two quarterbacks. Of course, one played at Texas, then Nebraska. The other one played at Georgia Tech. Why would I compare those two quarterbacks? But suddenly I was presented with that decision, of course, because they were both on the roster. And I said, well, I believe Casey Thompson's a better quarterback than Jeff Sims. And I think statistically that's been backed up, even though Thompson has played on slightly better teams. Now it really looks to be the case. Now, I'm not saying Casey Thompson would have won today's game or that Nebraska would be that much better off with Casey Thompson, but certainly better throwing quarterback by far and doesn't make those kind of mistakes. 17 TDs, 10 picks last year, 24-9 for Texas 2 years earlier when Casey Thompson led the Big 12 in touchdown passes. So my goodness, this was my game plan for Nebraska going into the second half. It was basically, okay, you got a quarterback who can't throw and makes bad decisions. After the interception, the bad interception, I would have thought that Matt Rule would have gone to a backup quarterback of either Harburg or Purdy. However, I thought, well, if he's not going to the second string now, that means that neither one of these guys is ready. Even though Matt Rule made the comment during August camp just a few weeks ago that they can win. Nebraska can win with their backup quarterback. Well, that must not be the case because he didn't go with either one of them. He stayed with Sims despite all these mental and physical errors and issues. Ironically, he came out the first drive and he looked sharp. The first pass he completed, he had to wait for the tight end to clear the coverage, find the open window, wait, and deliver the football on time. First 2 or 3 throws were impressive, not just the throws, but the decisions that led to the throws. And then after that, it all fell apart. So obviously, Purdy and Harburg do not appear to be ready, or Rule would have made that move, unless he was just reluctant and thought, okay, the game's lost. We're not getting it back at this point. So my suggestion at halftime was, if one of your backups is ready, go to him. If you don't feel that they can take on a Power 5 game type situation, then don't go to them. And this is what you do. You take the game out of Sims' hands in terms of between the ears. You don't make him stand in the pocket and go through progressions and make decisions. You run Gabe Irvin, who ran, I believe, 7 times for 55 yards against a better, much better, more stout Minnesota defense. That's one thing you do. Secondly, Jeff Sims ran 19 times against Minnesota for 91 yards. I know that not all of those were designed run plays, but many of them were. I'm guessing he was flushed from the pocket and ran 5 times. So they had 12 to 14 designed runs for Jeff Sims, and they didn't design any runs for him through the first half of play. Why? Run Gabe Irvin, run Jeff Sims a zillion times in the second half. I called for 15-plus runs for Jeff Sims. And then also, when you're going to throw the ball, make it at the line of scrimmage. Traditional screens, delayed screens, slip screens, just little pop passes, all of that for Jeff Sims. Do not allow him to make a decision. Now, the first touchdown on the board for Nebraska, what'd they do? 2nd and 17, they went with a draw play. Quarterback, design draw. He was never intended to throw the football, drop back in the pocket, and then took off for the touchdown. Couldn't get back in the game, though. Colorado, this ship had sailed by then. And the Colorado defense, we're going to give them some credit. Sure, Nebraska shot themselves in the foot, or Jeff Sims shot themselves in the foot constantly. But Jordan Dominic's a good player. He had 2.5 tackles for loss for Colorado. Marvin Ham is probably the best defensive player, at least in the front 7. We know that Travis Hunter guy's back there. 3 catches, 73 yards on offense for Travis Hunter. Maybe he didn't flash today like he did in week 1, but he played, how many plays? A zillion? Amari McNeil is a defensive lineman transfer in from Tennessee. He did not play, only a few snaps against TCU, was not ready because he just came to this team on August 6th. Well, they put him into the lineup, and he was one of the keys that caused Colorado to stay in the game, in the running game, and stop Nebraska's running game and not let that be the dominant force on the other side, because Nebraska came in obviously wanting to control the clock, keep Sanders and Hunter off the field, and run the football and be the more physical team. But it did not work. Colorado's got Colorado State, probably the easiest game on its schedule, coming up at home next week. Then, get this, will this not be entertaining? Colorado at Oregon, Colorado against USC the next 2 weeks. I said it last week after watching them play against TCU. This is going to be a team that when they're misfiring on offense, and it's going to happen against the best teams in the Pac-12, let's say the top 4 to 5 teams, they're going to probably put up a couple ugly losses, like 52-24 kind of losses. But when they're hot, and Shedeur Sanders has been hot the first 2 weeks, and maybe he's just this good, and I believe he's close to this good, that they're going to scare and maybe pull off an upset against one of the best teams, meaning I don't know who they play in the former North Division. They do play Oregon, of course. That's next week or in 2 weeks. Don't think they've got Washington, but USC, Utah, look out. UCLA, look out. Colorado's coming. For Nebraska, they've got 2 games at home, actually 3 consecutive at home, but 2 out of conference that they should be able to handle and work things out. Is Heinrich Harburg the answer, or A better answer than Jeff Sims? Well, they didn't go to him today. He's been with the program since 2021. Chuba Purdy threw 48 passes last year when Casey Thompson went down. Only went 22 of 48 with 3 picks. So not a great option for the backup situation there at Nebraska. So they either get Jeff Sims' head right or they go to one of these other 2 guys, and they should be able to win these games, handily against Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech before Michigan comes to town for the second game of the Big Ten season for the Huskers. Our thoughts on Colorado, Nebraska. Leave your comments below right here at the Voice of College Football. Please like the video, subscribe, do all those good things, and support the channel, and we will see you next time.